Hey guys, this is Locke. In this video, I'm going to go over my updated guild raid guide. For some context, last week I had about 2,000 points lower than I have now, which is about 11,000, and my strength was pretty much the same. It's just that I'm using totally different units, different formations, and even different strategies. So I'm hoping by explaining some of these, you guys can also get a little bit more points in your guild raids as well. So I'm going to start with the silent raid because I think that's the easiest one to explain. Let me go over here because I haven't changed. So this is the setup that I'm using, and I think this is actually the setup that most people are able to replicate. If you take a look, my Shane is only level 38. So instead of Shane, you can use a Delance, and you might even be able to do better with Delance. My Delance isn't really that leveled up because I got other units, like I got Cosette, so I decided I wouldn't really need to use Delance so much, so I didn't really level him up. He's only level 42, I believe. So the difference in strength between Shane and Delance in my case wasn't that bad, so that's why I decided to use Shane instead. So the reason I'm using this formation is because I have two DPS units, right? So I am using Infiltration. So my two DPS units actually increase their attack power a lot. My healer, Karen, gets to survive a little bit better, right? And just in case, my Welder dies or something, Karen is still hopefully able to avoid some silences, because if she gets silenced, she can't heal and the party would die. So just in case Welder, surprisingly gets killed off early or something like that, I have Karen there with extra status effect resistance, and that stacks with her own passive. So she's hopefully able to keep from getting silenced a bit more, a bit more often with the setup. And finally, Welder, I have him at the back. I realized that, if I'm able to keep him alive longer, then I can avoid the party getting silenced, and if the party isn't silenced, then Karen's able to keep pumping out heals and everyone survives. With this party, I actually don't really die right now, unless, that huge AoE that the boss does, it's centered on one person. Around tier 10, that AoE becomes really, really big, such that it's really hard to avoid. And in that case, I then get killed because I can't run out, run that unit out in times that everyone dies. But until then, this setup doesn't really I usually don't die if I'm able to use this setup. The good thing about this, if you're using Shane or even Delance, is that if you have them on slot 1, the boss is going to target that unit most often. And because they jump around a lot, they're actually able to avoid getting hit just by jumping around. I don't even have to move them around as much. They just, jump around and avoid it. And because of that, they're able to keep putting out DPS while moving around so they don't get hit. I've done, I just did a showcase showing the run that I did where I scored about 5k points. So that's the video I just posted before that. There wasn't any commentary, it's just to show, what I did, and you can kind of see what I'm doing, how I'm avoiding some of the hits. I know, if he does this AoE attack, then this is coming next, so I kind of pre-move my units beforehand or something like that. So you can kind of see to get an idea of how I'm avoiding the hits, such that I'm able to basically continuously stay alive for 5 minutes until the boss does that huge centered AoE on one unit at that point. Of the 3 runs I did 3. 2 of the runs I died because of that, and the last run I was able to survive the whole 5 minutes. I think the video I showed is actually the one that survives the whole 5 minutes. But yeah, this is the setup that I have now, and with Karen, and I don't actually have time acceleration. I have 1 piece of time acceleration on her. This is the setup that I've used on Karen. I've just moved the gears over, but I have 5 pieces of the cooldown gear on her, and 1 time acceleration, and then I have revive and rage. But if people aren't really dying, then you don't really even need to bring revive and rage. With this setup, I found that this was the highest score I could get with the setup. I've tried switching people around, but this was the best thing that worked for me, and this is the highest score that I have of 3 raids as well. The next raid that I'm going to talk about is this one, the chaotic raid, and this is the setup that I'm using here. The formation that I'm using here is actually the pincer formation, and the reason that I'm using it, here it is. The reason I'm using it is because I have 3 universal characters, and actually the whole idea here is 2 things. The first thing that I'm trying to do is to keep Theon alive. If he dies, I find that everyone dies, because the CC from this boss is pretty, bad. Like he causes fear. Everyone runs, different directions, and then they die to like a AoE, or they die to those like fear circle things that keep hovering around. So I need Theon to be alive, and that's the reason why I decided I actually don't want to put him in the tank slot. I want to put him in the middle slot because I don't want him to take a lot of damage, because if he dies, the run actually fails. So instead, I have to put a different tank. And so I tried a few ideas, and I really like Welder as a tank. And the reason I'm using Welder here is because of his skill here, like this one, the damage immunity skill. Now, if I pair this with her ultimate, which she is able to decrease skill cooldown often, I'm actually able to keep the damage immunity buff often on Welder. Now, a lot of people might not have Welder, so what if you use the blue Len? You can try with her, because she has a similar buff as well. Like, she also has a immunity to damage buff. It's 10 seconds. Welder's is about 11.8 at the level I'm at, but you can still use the same idea. You can, if you want, you can even run like skill cooldowns on her, or you can run skill up if you want. But yeah, I mean, you're basically looking for a tank. Like that's what Welder, like. If I'm using Welder instead of Len, obviously Welder is going to do a lot more damage, but my main damage dealer is actually Cosette. Welder is just there as a tank, and he does a pretty good job. He's able to, stay there and just take a lot of hits. So this was the idea I came up with. So using Welder as a tank, you can again use Len instead, and Serena is going to use her healings. She's going to keep healing, continuously pumping out healings, because her 3 skills, all of them increase the heals, and she's also going to decrease the skill cooldown, which is keeping her tank, Welder, or Len alive. So yeah, I mean, I found this formation worked better than like any of the other. I've tried crit before, but I found that this was just a lot better. It gives a little bit increased defense for Welder when his shield is down, and it decreases the skill cooldown of Serena as well, so she's able to pump out more heals. And Cosette in the back, now she is benefiting from increased attack speed and attack. So I found that this was the best formation overall for me here. Instead of using crit, I was just able to score more points like this. And so finally, this leaves this formation, the ruler of lightning, and I found this one to be the most difficult. I scored the least amount of points here compared to the other, the other two, and I tried a bunch of things, and this was eventually what I came up with. Of the 3 healers, I have Serena, Karen, and Shay. Shay is the worst healer. She pumps out the least amount of heals possible. But because I have Henry as well on this stage, I decided that I would use my worst healer here, because I have an additional healer anyway, and I really want to bring Henry, because if I don't bring him, I'm gonna get shocked and the party's gonna die. So instead, I decided to put Shay here. I started with Karen here, like the first time I started doing these raids. I was using Karen, but I find that Shay does better, because Karen is better off elsewhere. So so this is what I came up with, and I tried using Shay in the first slot and Henry in the first slot. It's pretty interchangeable, to be honest. I found that it didn't really make much of a difference. They all kind of end up dying at the same time, and I really need a buff removal. So Claire is really important to have, in my opinion, because if you don't have Claire, then you don't have Claire. You might have to use somebody like the green Claire, or if you don't have this Claire and you want to try something, what you can do is you can bring somebody like Spike, right? And if you bring Spike, you have to leave him on the first slot. Like you're using Spike to tank, and so he's going to be, let me actually put him here. So he is going to be here, and you're going to turn off your skills. Like, at the bottom of the screen, it says skill on off. You have to turn off the skill, and you have to use the 2 skills manually. And whenever the boss uses his buff, his attack buff, that's when you will manually press Spike's, his buff removal skill. And you can do that. If you bring Claire, it's automatic, because she only uses her skill when the buff has a buff. Then when the boss has a buff. But if you're bringing Spike, or even if you bring Eileen, where is she now? This one. If you bring Eileen, it's the same thing. You can control her yourself manually. You can use her as a tank, and that's why you have her in the first slot, because you're going to be running around with her, trying to get everybody to, you're going to try to stay away from everyone else, such that she's taking the brunt of the damage. The only problem if you're using Eileen or Spike is because they are melee units, right? You have to be a bit careful, because the boss can easily kill you. Because he's going to do increased damage to units that are closer by. So you might even have to, run around more often than you do with, like Claire or something, right? So to be a bit more careful. Fortunately, both of them, like Eileen and Spike, both have a passive that helps them survive a little bit better. So with that, you might be able to get away with, using them and being able to survive. Like, you might score better doing that than using the green Claire. So try it out, see what works better for you. And hopefully it gives you an idea of how to tackle this. So I ended up using this for my formation. I'm using the basic formation. Actually, let me move Claire back so that I don't get lost in my train of thought. Okay, so Claire goes here. Okay, so the reason that I'm using the basic formation is because I have Chris in the party already, and everybody has high crit. I don't really care about Henry and Shay's crit, but both Claire and Chris already have high crit, and with the pet that I'm using, Mercure, who also increases crit rate, using the crit formation actually puts me at over 100% crit. So I don't really need that. So instead, I thought I would do something like this, and I ended up moving Shay like that. I think that's the final formation that I used. Let me just double check. Yes, so I used Shay here. And the reason I did that was because I wanted her to, the more often she's hitting, the faster she's building up her ultimate, and everyone gets to pull off their ultimate with that. So that's the reason I decided to do this instead of the crit formation. But if you don't have Chris, if you don't have a crit pet, maybe it's better to use something like this, and you can actually put Shay in the back then, because that's where she'll be benefiting from the increased attack speed. But for me, since I already have a very high crit chance, I didn't need to do that. That's the reason why I chose to go with this formation instead. So, I hope these tips helped you, and I hope you guys can score a little bit higher on your runs, maybe this week or next week when you employ some of these ideas. I don't expect someone to suddenly use these ideas and get say 10k points when you got 5k before, but maybe you can get an additional 1000 or 2000 points, and your whole guild can hopefully get an additional 10k or 20k if you employ some of the ideas I'm talking about. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I also hope that it helps you guys with your runs. That's it for this time, so I will see you guys next time. Take care, guys.